And now, the best of Ben Fordham Live.
It's Tuesday, July 27. Great to have your company. On the show today, Dawn Fraser. Dawn was with Ariane Titmus's mum and dad yesterday when our new golden girl won the gold medal in the 400-metre freestyle at the Tokyo Olympics. Dawn Fraser will join us today. Don't miss that. Also, why aren't we using rapid antigen testing in our response against the coronavirus? It's an Aussie-made piece of technology. It's being used in the US, the UK, and around Europe. Why not here in Australia? We're dipping our toe in the water, using it in some areas, but it should be adopted far and wide. We'll catch up with Robbie Katter from the Katter Australian Party, who's a big supporter. Also, the Environment Minister, Susan Lee, will be along. She had a big win in her fight to save the reputation of the Great Barrier Reef. We'll go to Harley Carnes in the US, John Adderley in the UK, and so much more. The show starts now.
People you know, opinions that matter, news you can trust. You're listening to the best at breakfast. And now, Ben Fordham comments.
Well, we receive all sorts of feedback around here, as you'd expect. It's part of the job. And yesterday, someone complained that I described the month-long Great Sydney never-ending lockdown as ridiculous. Apparently, that kind of language is unhelpful at a time like this, and it just whips people up. Well, my experience is people don't need any whipping up at the moment. They're already angry and anxious, and they don't need a bloke sitting behind a microphone saying everything's just fine when hundreds of thousands of people don't have a job to go to. My main message has been this must be our last lockdown because we can't keep going on like this. And if I use the word ridiculous, well, that wouldn't surprise me. I think it's ridiculous that we're in this situation heading into the 5th week of lockdown. I think it's ridiculous that we didn't lock down the eastern suburbs when all of this kicked off. I think it's ridiculous that the limo driver was able to transport airline crew without a mask and without being vaccinated. So I'm not all that surprised if I've been throwing around the word ridiculous. I've certainly described the lockdowns as destructive and depressing and damaging to our health because they're terrible. They're terrible for children, awful for older people, and I think everyone wants to know when are we going to get out of this thing. And while the health impacts of COVID are deadly serious, so are the health impacts of lockdowns. Just ask anyone at Lifeline or the Kids Helpline. They're the ones taking the calls. Or the funeral director who told us last week he's seeing a spike in suicides. We got an email from a tradie who spoke about wanting to harm himself with his nail gun. We spoke to a mother who drives to her son's house every morning to make sure that he's still with us. He was running his own business, employing 6 people, and thanks to COVID, it all vanished. Lockdowns are destructive on our health. And if you're going to lock people in their homes for 1 month, 2 months, or maybe 3 months or more, we've got a right to question the game plan. And the current game plan has had holes in it since the very start. And for a few weeks now, I've been asking a pretty straightforward question. Can we really achieve our goal? Because we've been told we won't be out of lockdown until we can get the number of people infectious while in the community down to 0. Now, I've cast doubt on that from the beginning because the people who are infectious in the community don't know they're infectious in the community. So how do you stop people from doing something that they don't know they're doing? We've spoken to an epidemiologist from Harvard Medical School, Martin Kulldorff, who says you're never going to get it down to 0. So it's not just me saying we need to be realistic and we need to accept that coronavirus isn't going anywhere. So yes, I do question parts of the lockdown strategy. I make no apologies for thinking some decisions have been ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that Year 12 kids are being kept away from face-to-face learning in the lead up to the HSC trials. They should be there yesterday. I think it's ridiculous that schools have blocked kids from going when overwhelmingly the experts say it's in their best interest to be there. It's ridiculous that our education officials are now waving the white flag on the rest of this school term. I think it's ridiculous that 300,000 tradies and construction workers were stood down when there was no specific health advice informing that decision. And yes, it was ridiculous that the health minister advised against that when we're told every other time it's all about the health advice. It's ridiculous that elderly people can't have a lawnmower man come around and cut the grass when there's no face-to-face contact. It's ridiculous that the Premier yesterday justified that decision saying, oh yeah, but the lawnmower man might stop to get petrol. Like it's only cars driven by gardeners that require fuel. I think it's ridiculous that businesses have had to wait until week 5 of the lockdown to register for payroll support, and the fact they've now got to wait a few more weeks for the money to hit their accounts. I'll tell you what's even worse. When people have had to fight for the right to be with their loved ones in hospital. The cruel health orders that tell pregnant women that they have to give birth on their own, and if their husband wants to be there, they've got to apply for an exemption. The cruel health order that told one of our listeners she wasn't allowed to see her husband who's recovering from a severe brain injury. And I'll tell you what else is ridiculous. Treating people who live on their own like second-class citizens. Those in charge refuse to bring in a singles bubble to help the mental fitness of people living solo. And tell me this isn't ridiculous. If you're hooked up with someone on a dating app 24 hours before the lockdown, you can visit each other. But if you've been best mates for 50 years and live more than 10 k's apart, you're not allowed to see each other. You're on your own. Yes, I find that ridiculous too. So to the person who complained because I dared use the word ridiculous, what can I say? Guilty as charged. 131873, the open line number. Now, New South Wales Police will guard a Western Sydney apartment block for the next 2 weeks because multiple residents have been diagnosed with COVID-19. More than 100 residents in the unit block on Devitt Street in Blacktown are now in isolation and police are on guard outside. The 9 News reporter James Wilson is there. James, good morning. Set the scene for us.
Morning, Ben. Well, police are on scene. They've set up a command post, and of course, we saw this in Bondi a few weeks ago. Things like supplies, food, and medicine, crucial supplies will need to be brought into these people. It's a big unit block. There's around 50 units in the complex, and there's more than 100 residents. We've also seen pathology going in and out. They've tested every single resident. What we know at the moment is there's 5 confirmed cases split across multiple levels. We spoke to one woman, Michelle, who received a test back already. She's thankfully tested negative, but obviously these swabs are still being processed, and the sheer scope of this situation is still trying to be understood by the authorities. There's
James Wilson outside the apartment block. Let's go inside right now to Michelle. Hello, Michelle.
Hi.
What's it like inside at the moment?
It's a bit daunting, a bit scary. There's a lot of police outside, and we just kind of don't know what's going on right now.
So when you look out your window, what do you see?
I see lots of camera crews. I see a police van, police tape, police cars, police presence, security guards, multiple random people walking around.
So you've been told that police will be outside for 2 weeks. You must all stay inside. Have you been told how you're going to be able to get the essentials? I'm sure that New South Wales Health will step in and sort that out.
Yeah, so they haven't told us that yet. All they've told us is to leave our rubbish outside by 9 a.m. every morning. We haven't been told about the police presence sticking around for 2 weeks, but just assuming that at the moment. All we've been told is about the rubbish, nothing further on the medication, the groceries, how things can be delivered to us yet.
Okay, 5 cases in the building, but you're not one of them. You've returned a negative test.
Yeah, thankfully. Thankfully.
All right, well, hang in there, Michelle. We'll talk to you again, I think. Thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So Michelle is one of the residents inside that apartment block on Devitt Street in Blacktown. 100 residents inside, 5 positive cases, and police will now guard that apartment block for the next 2 weeks. No residents are allowed out. On our way to Dawn Fraser, it appears I'm not the only person who finds elements of these lockdowns ridiculous. Frosty says it's ridiculous how the expert health advice changes so much. Leah says, morning, Ben, I concur 100%. Well done for voicing what we're thinking. And Edwina says, thanks, Ben. Finally, someone making sense. Nothing is ridiculous based on the comments you just made. So I'm not the only one who finds some elements of the lockdown absolutely bloody ridiculous.
Sydney's best breakfast.
2GB.
Well, Australia has a new queen of the pool. Ariane Titmus won gold in the 400-metre freestyle. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now, knocking off the American legend Katie Ledecky. And what about Dawn Fraser? She was there with Ariane's mum and dad, Steve and Robin, watching on as their girl won the gold from the best in the world. Dawn Fraser, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing really well. You sound fantastic. What was it like yesterday being there with the family?
Oh, look, I'm going through goosebumps again, Ben. It was absolutely fantastic, being with the pods. POD stands for the parents of the Dolphins swim team, and and I had a beautiful day with them, and it was really great to see all the girls and the boys swimming well, and the men's relay team. And it just opened up the affection that for Australia, that everyone loves Ariana. She's a beautiful young lady, and I mean, so are the rest of the team. And it's probably the best team that we've ever had and sent to an Olympic Games.
Well, that coming from you means a lot. Now, how was the heart?
Pumped a lot. I think I got up to about 156 in a minute.
And for Steve and Robin, I mean, they've really made so many sacrifices, haven't they? They moved from Tasmania, went to Queensland because they wanted to be closer to the coach, Dean Boxall. They really put everything on the line for their daughter.
Yeah, and that's the coach and the pupil doing the best thing possible for them, to both of them. Dean is such a beautiful guy, and his emotions came out yesterday. He's gone right around the world, and it's sort of, he's brought Ariana up to where she is as a world champion. Little bit did we know when she first came up here to Brisbane, to Queensland, that she started off as a breaststroke swimmer. And she changed over to a freestyle swimmer and now is the best in the world. What
did you make of Dean's celebration?
Oh, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. In fact, we were all jumping in the room at the same time with him. So, but we didn't have the bar to hang on to go up to do the monster one.
Yeah, well, look, I just thought it was fantastic watching him. That's just pure emotion, right? That's the best of sport.
Absolutely. And it's nice to see a coach have that emotion. And Dean is a very emotional person, as we all saw on the television yesterday, and the tears coming out. I mean, they have achieved something that Mr. Gallagher and I achieved in 1956, coaching, having a best coach in the world and winning a gold medal.
Yeah, and you still give credit where it's due. Now, this isn't the end for Ariane Titmus. We've got more to come. How's she going to go?
Look, I think she'll go pretty well. She mightn't go as well in the 200, but, I never can understand how that young girl, I mean, she had her in the last 100. She had Ledecky all the way, and the 25 metres to go, there was no way in the world Ledecky could try and stay with her. And, she swam her own race. She had planned it, and that's what I like about a swimmer, is that you plan your race, you go in and you do it. You don't worry about your competitors, and that's what we've been trying to mentor with all of the team that's gone away now, is you swim your own race and do the very best that you can.
I saw yesterday a bit of footage of you with Mum and Dad, and did I spot some cocktails that were doing the rounds?
Yeah, they opened a bottle of champagne for them, but I didn't have a drink. Just for Grandma and Grandpa and Mum and Dad.
Oh, well, look, we're so happy for you and so happy for them. And, boy, it's good to hear your voice, Dawn. You sound on top of the world.
Well, Ben, who wouldn't be on top of the world with our girls and boys winning gold medals at the Olympic Games in Tokyo? I'm sorry I'm not there, but COVID stopped that, so I'm happy to spend it with the pods.
We love you, Dawn. We'll talk soon. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ben. Cheers.
The one and only Dawn Fraser, who won gold in the 100 free at 3 consecutive Olympics, 56, 60 and 64. And she was there yesterday with Steve and Robin. You imagine that, making the call all those years ago, okay, let's face it, it's roll of the dice stuff. It's a massive gamble. We're going to pack up our entire life. We're going to move to Queensland, put our faith in this coach and hope that our girl can swim and become a world champion. Ariane Titmus, we love your work. Now, I want to hear from Year 12 parents this morning and Year 12 students. Any students doing their final exams, how are you getting on at the moment? Trials have started in some schools this week. Despite no one being in class, hundreds of schools have delayed the trials by 2 weeks. And then you've got practical exams, things like drama, music, dancing and design. technology. Now, I just want to fact check something that Gladys Berejiklian told me yesterday. She says we have allowed students with practical exams to actually come onto the school campus. If there are practical requirements for kids to be at school, there are provisions for that already if they need face-to-face learning. Well, there's not a lot of face-to-face learning going on, but are you getting access to school if you need to for practical exams? Is that happening? Are you getting the support you need? Because the Herald is reporting this morning that this may not be happening as much as the Premier is asking. Singers and musicians can't rehearse at school due to COVID risk. Schools have been told to allow HSC students when absolutely necessary, but that's the reason why we've got indecision and uncertainty, because of words like that. Schools have been told to allow HSC students when absolutely necessary. In other words, if it's not absolutely necessary, then don't have the kids at school. I mean, they're getting ready for their HSC trials. If you're having trouble, let us know. We will raise it with the Education Department. And I think this is a bit heavy-handed. The head of the Sydney Catholic schools is calling for the HSC exams to be cancelled altogether. Greg Whitby says because of indefinite online learning, the exams should be replaced with assessments. But people have spent a year or more preparing for major exams. And now you've got people like the head of Sydney Catholic schools essentially waving the white flag. The Treasurer Dominic Perrottet and the Deputy Premier John Barilaro are pushing to get Year 12 students back straight away. In my opinion, they should have been back yesterday.
Sydney's best breakfast.
2GB.
19 minutes after 7 o'clock. Now, we need to approve rapid antigen COVID testing in Australia because in outbreaks, it can take 3, 4 or 5 days to get a result in a traditional test. Rapid antigen testing gives you a result in just 15 minutes. You can take the test at home. We make them here in Australia. The Brisbane company Illume has just signed a $300 million deal with the US Defence Department. Another Aussie company is entering the Asian market, but our own Therapeutic Goods Administration has not approved the tests for use here. Let's go to Robbie Catter from Catter's Australian Party. Robbie Catter, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Ben.
You've been giving this a big push. Tell me why it's important that we hurry up and hit go.
Well, I mean, for a start, we should be doing everything possible to get business back on the ground and get us back to normality. And all these other countries around the world have adopted the same practice. And there might be a good reason for it, Ben, but I don't know what that is. And, the second reason is it's Australian-developed technology and Australian business. And, we've essentially helped that R&D for that resource, and it's been benefited from all the other countries and not us. So, we should be, for a start, backing our own guys and our own businesses, and also we want to be back on the ground as soon as possible. And this stuff can get us answers straight away. So it would be a really effective way of getting us as close to back to normality as possible.
According to the Doherty Institute, the rapid antigen testing is 99.96% accurate. You've got 21 countries in the EU using them, including Greece, which is distributing testing kits to school students and staff. In Singapore, people are screened before going to sporting events and entertainment venues using these rapid antigen tests. In Germany, you've got to have a negative rapid test in the last 24 hours if you want to take part in indoor social activity. I mean, we talk about vaccines being part of the passport to freedom, but that's in the long term. This is the short term. We need to do something about this, Robbie.
Well, that's the question in our mind, because, everyone in the whole thing's been focused on the lockdown, keep us safe and that sort of thing. But there's all those hundreds of thousands of small business out there that are saying, when can we start operating again? And this is the key to getting back faster into normality. And when that answer's lying there, the question needs to be asked, and if there's a really good reason, fine, but we need some answers from government why we're not implementing this right now so that, we can have that rapid testing in place.
All right, well, good on you for lobbying the TGA, and we'll keep up the fight here, Robbie. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Ben. All the best.
Robbie Catter from Catter's Australian Party. Now, in the US, modelling from Harvard says rapid testing will save their economy more than $25 billion a year. Greg says, my daughter's in the UK working as a nanny. The kids she looks after had a rapid test. Both showed positive. She got tested, and yes, she was positive too. She's okay now, but absolutely we should be using them here. Raj says rapid antigen testing has been available in India for several months. Anyone can buy it for 250 rupees or about $5. Diana says if we screened healthcare workers such as ED, COVID wards, aged care, etc., we would reduce the risk of them infecting patients and other staff. Why aren't we doing it here? It doesn't make sense. Anthony's just called in. Now, Anthony, you want to talk about HSC. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Ben. How are you?
Good. Are you calling from a school as such?
I am. I'm the principal at St. Leo's Catholic College at Warunga, and we're a year 7 to 12 school, sorry.
Okay.
And
what's going on with the HSC?
Good question. After reading the media reports this morning, I believe the students need some clarity, definite clarity about what's happening both with the HSC and also with the upcoming trials. And I know there's lots of talk about it, but I'm having a Zoom meeting tonight with the Year 12 students and an invitation to all parents tomorrow night, just so I can give certainly my perspectives and about what's going on and trying to give some clarity because that's so important. But our students have been up for their practical trial preparations and their practical HSC preparations with music, industrial technology, wood, drama, and all those subjects that have the practical element to them.
And what about the HSC trials? Have you delayed yours?
Yes, we have. Yeah, most Catholic schools who are using the Catholic school trials have delayed theirs, and it's supposed to start on August the 9th. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see whether it does start then.
And what about the head of Sydney Catholic Schools, Greg Whitby, saying we should just cancel the HSC altogether?
Yeah, Greg Whitby is the he runs the Parramatta Diocesan Catholic Schools, and Tony Farley runs the Sydney Catholic Schools. And yeah, there's merits on both sides of that argument. Certainly, it's a far bigger debate than what we can do over the next couple of days. That's for sure.
Okay, but most of your students aren't able to do any face-to-face learning at the moment in the lead up to their trials.
The school's open. I'm up here at school at the moment, and we have about 1 to 2% of students coming a day, and we have they come to school. They're supervised here at school, but they don't actually have face-to-face. They operate via Zoom and the home-based learning program that we do have.
Boy, it's tough for them at the moment.
It is. It's very tough. Yeah, that's why we just need some clarity and some certainty. So as soon as the government can get round to that, that'd be fantastic.
And I'm sure you've read all the expert medical advice that says that kids should be back at school.
Yeah, but then we've also got the teachers here as well, so they're not quite in the same boat. So we've got to balance both, and it's difficult, absolutely difficult. And I also feel for the parents. You know, I speak to a lot of parents, well, not a lot of parents, but certainly a few parents every night, and you know, some of them are finding it very, very tough running their own jobs at home and also trying to supervise the students, particularly those with younger students.
No doubt about it. You're a good man for calling in, and I wish your students the best of luck with the HSC trials. Anthony, thank you very much.
Very much, Ben. Good on you.
Good on you. Anthony's the principal at St. Leo's School in Warunga. I'd love to hear from other principals out there, other teachers, other parents, other students. 131873.
People you know. Opinions that matter. News you can trust. This is Breakfast with Ben Fordham on Sydney's 2GB.
131873, the open line number. You can use the text line 0460 873 873. Just on the rapid antigen testing and the question mark over why we're not using it more widely here in Australia. Lynn says, 2 of my children went to the semi-finals at Wimbledon. Everyone had this rapid test. They waited 15 minutes, then they were allowed in. Jane says all staff at Homebush Vaccination Centre use the rapid result testing before they start their shift every day, and they have a full test once a week. Well, we're following up on that one with New South Wales Health. Just on getting the jab, by the way, I've got my second jab in the arm now yesterday afternoon, so I'm fully vaxxed. I do admit that I did have a little bit of a restless night's sleep, but I didn't have a headache or anything like that that required a Panadol. Noel's got the right message. He says, my wife and I are in our 70s. We've both had our AstraZeneca jabs, nil effects. Wake up, people. Do it for yourself, your family, your mates, and Australia. The country I served and whose freedoms me and my mates served and we suffered and died for. He says, get off your selfish backsides and think of your fellow Aussies. And here's another one from Don. Morning, Ben. I've had my 2 AstraZeneca jabs and now I feel comfortable going out shopping with a low risk of infection. But I should now be rewarded with some freedom. If this was allowed, it's a good incentive for promoting the jab. I'm over 60, retired, and a little bit bored at home. Just a little bit, eh, Don? Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? Where you think, all right, what are we going to do now? We'll go for a walk. We go for another walk. And I know that there's a couple who live across the road from us, Nikki and Ed, and they've got a beautiful little dog called Banjo, and Banjo's sick of all the walks because previously Banjo would go for 2 walks a day. Now Banjo's going for about 6 walks a day, and Banjo's run off his feet. Now, when we're talking about giving people a little bit of hope through rapid antigen testing or going and getting the jab, there is another idea that's being floated here, and this is something that will be discussed in the National Cabinet and also the New South Wales Cabinet. It's obviously a New South Wales decision to make, but it's all around whether or not we can give some freedoms to some areas where we don't have many cases popping up. Now, the Premier talks about green shoots and where she sees them growing. Gladys Berejiklian said to us yesterday, the green shoots are the fact that we've been able to contain the virus to parts of Sydney. So she's talking about Sydney southwest. Places like Fairfield, Liverpool, Canterbury, Bankstown, they have higher case numbers. But others don't. And at some point you're going to have to relax some restrictions in those other areas. There are entire suburbs that have been locked in their home for a month despite having virtually 0 COVID cases and 0 exposure sites. So I want to hear from people this morning in lower parts of the Central Coast, from Broken Bay to Terrigal to Gosford and the Glenworth Valley. How do you feel being locked up with not a single active COVID case in your area? It's not about historical ones or how many there used to be. It's about here and now. There are suburbs that currently have 0 active cases, but they're still in lockdown. Orchard Hills, Glenmore Park and Blaxland, 0, 0, 0. Balgowlah, Mossman, Manly, Cremorne, 0. Alexandria, Zetland in the inner city, 0. Cherrybrook, Turramurra, Beecroft and Pennant Hills in the northwest, 0, 0, 0, 0. And then in the inner west, Lewisham, Petersham, Stanmore, Haberfield. And then you've got places like Newcastle, 0 cases. The Blue Mountains, 0 active cases. If you're living in any of these areas, how is the lockdown affecting you? I know children are climbing walls, businesses are going under, the mental toll is enormous. And in the areas I've just mentioned, there's no virus to be seen. Now, nobody wants to see Sydney southwest placed under even tighter rules. They're paying the price for the government's failure to lock down the eastern suburbs. But we can't argue with the scoreboard. So we may need to take harsher action where the numbers are climbing and give people a break in other parts of the city and the state where the virus is not present. 131873, the open line number. ben@2gb.com if you'd like to send an email. Ryan says, Ben, did you have AstraZeneca or Pfizer? I had Pfizer, Ryan. The moment they said anyone over 40 is eligible for the vaccine, you can go and have Pfizer, I signed up then, so I was in a long queue. And even though I was being sent some of these links that say, oh, there's a bit of a shortcut through other areas, and I've since learned that those links are entirely legitimate to use, but I was a little bit paranoid at the time. I thought, no, I better wait in queue like everyone else. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting for my appointment to pop up at the vaccine hub. But then with Jodie's dad going into palliative care and our local GP getting their first lot of Pfizer, the local GP said to me, if you're going in to visit your father-in-law every couple of days in a palliative care unit, you should be vaccinated. You should be vaccinated now. And obviously with Pfizer, you've got the 3-week turnaround. So I got the first one 3 weeks ago, had the second one yesterday. On the text line, someone says, "Hi Ben, if they open up suburbs with 0 cases, it will promote movement, which is what the Premier is trying to avoid." Well, that's where they need to come up with a set of rules, because if you've got places that don't have any cases, you can't have people from other areas where there are cases going into those places where there are not. Now, speaking of areas where they don't have COVID present at the moment, the Blue Mountains. Adam's on the line. Hello, Adam.
G'day, Ben. Thanks, mate. Just want to put an idea out there. What about locking down LGAs and opening up LGAs so people can move within them? I think that's going to be a really good idea for the Premier in the next few days. That should be able to get some movement back into LGAs where there is no COVID cases, so people can have just a little bit of normality back. That'd be awesome.
Well, I'm sure that you would welcome that in the Blue Mountains. Let's go to the Central Coast. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Ben. Our frustration here, I've got a small business, but the Central Coast is locked down. We've had no cases till suddenly one this week. But half an hour up the road towards Newcastle is open. So you have neighbours technically that can't visit each other, but it's driving us mad. No one's helping us, and it's just frustrating as hell.
Well, we know how hard it is to be in lockdown, so my theory is you're better off resting people when they're on the reserves bench instead of having them doing chin-ups and hill sprints and then they're wrecked by the time they actually do have a case in their area. You need to give them some liberties and then have them fresh and ready to go in case they do need to go into lockdown.
This is Ben Fordham Live with Sydney's best breakfast on 2GB 873.
Well, we need to say congratulations to Susan Lee, the Federal Environment Minister, because the Great Barrier Reef is safe for now. It's still in the sights of the UN's environmental body, UNESCO. Until last week, the committee was ready to downgrade the Great Barrier Reef and make it in danger. And then Susan Lee went on a bit of a worldwide adventure to try and turn the vote around, and she had a win. Susan Lee, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben, and good morning to your listeners.
Congratulations. I know you put in a lot of hard work, but this was the right decision, wasn't it?
Well, Team Australia put in a lot of hard work, Ben, and that was across many government departments, and certainly spending a week where I visited personally some of the countries that are on the World Heritage Committee, I think made a difference, because an in danger listing would have been a real kick in the teeth to our tourism operators who work so hard, our farmers, our fishers, our marine park managers. And people overseas didn't necessarily understand this is 2,300 kilometres of coastline with $3 billion of investment. And, you know, farmers have to watch what they do on their farms so that the water quality going into the inshore reef is good. Fishers have to report back. Marine park managers make sure they kick out anyone who shouldn't be there. And this is just a massive community effort. And just explaining that to people, plus, of course, the reason for the in danger listing was a climate change related one. And how can Australia control the emissions of the whole world? We're part of it, but we're not all of it.
Let's be fair dinkum here, Minister. This was a job from China to try and jam Australia. The bloke running the last meeting is a minister in the Chinese government, and Beijing put pressure on a number of other committee members to try and downgrade the Great Barrier Reef. So it was a political move. It was payback from China.
Look, all I can report is what I saw in the meeting, and actually the Chinese delegate went along with a consensus, the overwhelming consensus, which came from 19 out of 21 countries who basically agreed with us that it made no sense to be on the in danger list. So there was a fair bit of green bureaucracy politics, if I can call them that, which you often do find in some of these bodies, particularly when they're centred on a big picture without understanding individual countries as well as they should understand Australia. Just to have that climate change message mentioned as many times as it was gave me the opportunity to come back and say, hang on a minute, do you realise that our emissions are lower than the OECD average? Do you realise that we've got international partnerships in technology with Singapore, Germany and Japan that are all about how we bring emissions down? And, you know, do you realise that we're 1.3% only of global emissions? So making those points is really important.
I know you've had a lot on your plate with the Great Barrier Reef, but I've got a question for you as a former health minister, and that is whether we should be having a look at this rapid antigen COVID testing in Australia that gives you a result in 15 minutes. You've got 21 countries in the EU using them. Germany says they're a cornerstone for their coronavirus response. In the UK, everyone's got access to 2 free rapid antigen tests per week. They're being used in the USA, but we're not really using them in Australia. Should they be part of our response?
Well, as I understand through the Health Minister, we've approved some 18 through the TGA. So I hope the states pick this up. I hope the public health authorities use them. Obviously, in the middle of a pandemic where it's sad and it's frightening, you've got to be careful too with home diagnosis. But the chief health officers in each state are vital to this, and I'd like to see them deliver a positive message. So I think they're on their way well and truly, and I think they are an important part of our response.
Congratulations again on your whirlwind adventure, all about saving the reputation of the reef, and we hope we can all get there sometime soon. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Thanks, Ben.
Susan Lee, the Federal Environment Minister. It's 9 to 8. On the text line, Meredith says, Ben, what about Mona Vale, Newport, Avalon? No cases, and it's our third lockdown. What about us? And plenty of other people asking the same question. Well, that is going to form part of the conversation in the so-called crisis cabinet as Gladys Berejiklian, Dominic Perrottet, Brad Hazzard, John Barilaro and others try and work out, should we lift restrictions in some areas while tightening the grip in others? I mentioned that movie before called Richard Jewell, about the bloke who was falsely accused for being responsible for the bombing at the Atlanta Olympics. Ray here from Bondi, as always. He always says, as always, Ray. Ray here from Bondi, as always. That movie, Richard Jewell, is good. No surprise, it was directed by Clint Eastwood. It was too. So no surprise with Clint Eastwood in the director's chair. Now, I was just talking about rapid antigen testing. We're going to have a closer look at that at 7:15 this morning. Wendy, you've got another example to add to the list. Good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Yes, I do. I'm delighted that you're going to be talking about this. A friend of mine, he's Greek, lives in Athens, called me and was telling me that in Greece, every school child is issued with 3 free rapid test kits per week. They pick it up from the pharmacy. The kid they test themselves, obviously, on a Monday morning. If it's negative, they can go to school. Now, if Greece is doing this, why the hell are we not? Just imagine the Year 12 kids. They could go to school if we use this.
Yeah, well,
I don't understand why we're so far behind.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's not just Greece. 21 countries in the EU. Germany says it's one of the cornerstones of our response. In the UK, everyone has 2 free rapid antigen tests per week. They're 99.96% accurate. So we should be rolling them out widely here in Australia.
You're listening to Sydney's Best Breakfast. Ben Fordham Live. And now, the UK Report.
Well, John Adderley filling in for Adam Gilchrist at the moment. And John, this is good news again. Case numbers in the UK have come down for a 6th day in a row. How's freedom looking?
Yeah. How's freedom? Well, it feels good looking at these figures. Actually, it's got the scientists scratching their heads a little bit because we don't want to knock it, do we? But they find this is all a little bit unexpected, although, of course, it's good news. I mean, it might be a blip, but it looks pretty clear, doesn't it?
You think it's too good to be true, don't you?
Well, I think that is possibly right, partly because, we haven't felt the impact yet of easing restrictions in England, which was only a week ago. So, that is still a little way down the track, so that could change things. But, hey, let's go with it, shall we? Just under 25,000 daily cases in the latest daily figures, down from nearly 47,000 a week ago. And certainly it looks like we can put in the bin these fears of 100,000 cases a day. So that's certainly a good thing. And this is an interesting thought as well. It is the first time since the start of the pandemic that we've had a continuing drop in cases that doesn't coincide with a national lockdown. So, yeah, it is looking good. But, of course, that's when Downing Street and the government get all uppity and say, don't get carried away, folks. We're not out of the woods yet. Don't let your guard down. But, yeah, it's encouraging news. Cases down 6 day running.
And as far as deaths are concerned, 14 deaths from COVID overnight. Now, when you compare that to up above 1,000 a day back in January, that is certainly good news. And a lot of the world is watching because obviously Boris Johnson is having a crack here at learning to live with the virus. Now, you've got a new deal with France to stop terror attacks in the English Channel.
Yeah, I mean, this is intriguing. I didn't realise there was such a great threat, but apparently so. Terror attacks on cross-channel ferries and other ships crossing the channel. Well, to deal with this, they've signed in Paris today what they're calling the UK-France Maritime Security Treaty to swiftly and effectively deal with threats. Now, there are some suspicions that is this really more to do with an agreement on how to deal with the other problem in the channel, which these dangerously overloaded small boats carrying illegal migrants? Is it something to do with that? But no, they're stressing this is all about sharing information about security threats, and the two foreign secretaries and the two defence secretaries from France and the UK met to discuss this and various other things. Who knew that we had so many shared interests? They discussed European security, security in Africa, joint working on China, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, and the Indo-Pacific. Seems from that the Entente Cordiale is very much up and running and in very good shape.
Yeah, sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking that COVID is the only threat out there. We will talk tomorrow. You go and enjoy some more freedom.
Thanks very much.
Good on you. John Adderley filling in for Adam Gilchrist at the moment. It's 10-7. Back home, the ABC has been on a spending spree, not on children's TV shows or a 15th jazz channel, but on legal bills. The ABC has racked up a staggering $26 million on legal bills in just the past 4 years. $26.3 million in 4 years. Last year was a busy year. They spent more than $7 million on various legal claims. $2.6 million was spent fighting defamation action from Christian Porter and Peter V'landys. According to the ABC's annual report, some of which has been published in the Daily Telegraph, the legal department handled 100 different defamation complaints in 2020 alone. They must have some money to burn. The ABC's budget last financial year was $880 million, but they're crying poor. They want another $90 million in funding over the next 3 years. Well, the lawyers must be loving it. They've pocketed $26 million of taxpayers' money in the last 4 years alone.
You're listening to Sydney's Best Breakfast, Ben Fordham Live. And now, the US Report.
First Afghanistan, now the US is pulling combat forces out of Iraq as well. Harley Carnes, good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Yeah, well, the administration wants to be out of there. A lot of Americans want to be out of there. A lot of military people think it's foolhardy. They were only going to turn the countries over to the Taliban and any other radicals that want to do it, because a lot of the military people don't think that the governments there are strong enough to be able to hold themselves if they even want to. So we'll see what happens. That's the die's cast. We'll be out of there shortly, and we'll see how it all works out. We have to hope and pray that it's going to be better for the people who live there. And so that's the best we can do at the moment.
Harley, it's been a while since I've been on a roller coaster. I don't know about you, but there's a few people in New Mexico who are regretting their ride.
Well, that's for sure. I once said to a girlfriend on the top of a Ferris wheel, wouldn't it be nice if we could get stuck up here for a little while, honey? And she looked at me like, are you nuts? Like, no, it wouldn't be any fun to be up here for a long time. She would have been right. This was a roller coaster, and a fast one called El Bandito in New Mexico near the Texas border. 8 teenagers wound up trapped on the top of it. They're lucky it stopped while they were on the top because they're sitting upright. Otherwise, they could have been upside down in some other part of the ride, right? Nowhere to go. Some said they got real hungry. Others said they had to go to the bathroom. Nowhere to go up there. So I guess it wasn't really all that romantic after all. And used a cherry picker to get them down, big crane. But that's the only thing they could do. We don't even know why it froze so far.
Well, I just want to ask you about this, Harley Carnes, because all of Australia was watching yesterday as the American champion, Katie Ledecky, lined up for the final of the 400 metres freestyle in Tokyo, but then along came a girl from Australia called Ariane Titmus. Please tell me you were watching in America.
I want to know what made me think you might bring that up. Well, the Terminator lived up to her billing, that's for sure. And I thought it was stunning that halfway through it, she's behind a body length. And Katie Ledecky doesn't lose when she's in that position. But she did, because Ms. Titmus ran her down and won just off of Ledecky's world-class world record pace. So you got to take your hat off to her. I kind of thought the coach went a little nuts, but can't really blame him.
Yeah. We were loving every second of it. You know, there was an American journalist who wrote before the race, do Katie Ledecky's opponents even think that they have a chance? Well, we know the answer to that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of, now don't ever write stuff like that. It's like that's a curse.
Well, we appreciate Harley's Olympic update. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good on you. There's Harley Carnes covering the Olympic Games.
And now, Ben Fordham comments. Thanks to West End Mazda, North Parramatta and Blacktown. Open 7 days for your new Mazda test drive.
Well, sometimes in sport, the result only tells you part of the story. And that is the case with our new gold medalist, Ariarne Titmus. She won the 400-metre freestyle, beating the greatest female swimmer ever, the American Katie Ledecky. But let me tell you the story of how this came about, because this is about a girl living out a lifetime dream, and it wasn't just her. It was the whole family involved and her coach. Her family who made enormous sacrifices, because Ariarne Titmus was born in Tasmania and her potential was noticed early on in the early teen years of her life. So 6 years ago, her parents made a big call. They packed up the entire family and moved from Tassie to Brisbane. Mum and Dad, Steve and Robin, wanted to give their daughter the best chance of becoming a champion. So they enrolled her with Dean Boxall, who is a superstar coach. He's known for being pretty tough, take no prisoners. He flogs swimmers, but in his words, he bleeds with them. And when Ariarne joined Dean Boxall in 2015, she was swimming the 400 metres freestyle in 4 minutes 12. Katie Ledecky then won gold in Rio in a new world record. It was 16 seconds faster than Ariarne's best. So just imagine that. 16 seconds she had to make up. Boxall says, we just started chipping away. He put her through an intense military training regime, including a period he calls Hell Month. Sounds like fun, right? 7 hours of training every day for 4 weeks. Hell, all right. Boxall says it's all about finding the inner animal. And when you have a look at Dean Boxall, you've got a feeling that he's got plenty of animal. He was mic'd up in the lead up to Tokyo. Just have a listen to how he interacts with his squad.
1 more week, we fly to Tokyo. We're going to the enemy's land, mate. They're all going to be there. You're going to walk on the pool decking and see your competitors and ask, who did the better job? What an honour to be on the pursuit of going to the Olympics and being number one. Oh.
What about when he says we're going to enemy land? We're going to Tokyo in 1 week. Look, a lot of people couldn't handle it, but Ariarne knew Dean was trying to help her. He wanted to get the best out of her. So then we get to the Olympics. Titmus is in form, but the American Katie Ledecky is still considered the best female swimmer of all time. She's never lost at the Olympics. She's won 5 gold medals. The American has 15 world championship titles and 3 current world records. In the lead up to the race, one US journalist wrote, do Katie Ledecky's opponents even think they have a chance? Well, yes. Ariarne Titmus believes she did. Dean Boxall thought so. So did Steve and Robin Titmus. Then comes the 400-metre final yesterday. Katie Ledecky was in control for almost all of the race. But with 100 to go, Ariarne Titmus drew level. And then she found another gear. She hit the lead and she didn't look back. Ian Thorpe was urging her on in commentary, but so were 25 million Australians back home doing exactly the same. Mum and Dad, Steve and Robin, were screaming at the TV in Queensland. Robin says, my God, she can race. And she did. She hit the wall 0.67 of a second in front of the greatest ever. As Basil Zempler said in commentary, to become a legend, you've got to beat a legend. And she did. Her time, 16 seconds faster than when she started with Dean Boxall. And how much did we all need that? Boxall has now gone viral for his reaction He went berserk. He says, when I go home, I dream for my swimmers. I don't turn off. That's why I get emotional. And after the win, Ariane Titmus said, I was just a little girl who started swimming, who had a big dream. I tried to think about that this morning when I woke up, and I think about everyone back home doing it tough in lockdown. I feel nice that I can put on a bit of a show and bring back a bit of joy to everyone's lounge rooms. Well, Ariane Titmus, you did that. And here's the best part. That was the first instalment in a trilogy. We've got the 200 and the 800 freestyle to come. Titmus leads Ledecky 1-0. Bring it on.
An update from Japan, thanks to the new Kia Cerato GT. Get mean.
Now, keep an eye on Kaylee McEwen today in the final of the 100 backstroke. She's only 20 and she broke the world record of the Australian trials. And there's a family tragedy that's driving her today. Her father, Sholto, died last year after a battle with brain cancer. And he'd hoped to see her swim at the Olympics, but because of the 12-month delay of the Olympic Games, that couldn't happen. Kaylee says, while it's shattering, it meant that she got to spend a lot more time with him before he passed away. And her father taught her how to swim. And he left her with these words, always be brave, be strong and be determined. So we'll be cheering her on, Kaylee McEwen, at 11:30 this morning. And also look out this afternoon for Jessica Fox, who begins her campaign for gold in the women's kayak. She'll have to get through the semi-finals, then it's on to the main final. And despite winning 10 world championships, she's never won an Olympic gold medal. She's 27 and trains at Penrith. Mum and Dad, Richard and Miriam, both Olympians. Well done and good luck to Jessica Fox. Now, I'm sure that Ray Hadley would have been watching on as Ariane Titmus knocked over Katie Ledecky in the pool yesterday. How good was that, Ray?
Incredible swim, incredible. Sort of shades of what happened in the Sydney pool with Gary Hall Jr. and Ian Thorpe. This young woman, Ledecky's done everything, and she was behind. She turned in front with 50 to go, and you thought Ledecky's going to come back, but she maintained the lead all the way to the wall. And just a reward, she says after the event, I'm not the best swimmer in the world, but I'm probably one of the hardest working swimmers in the world. And hard work has its rewards, and that's a gold medal for Ariane Titmus, and congratulations to her. And she was very gracious in defeat, Katie Ledecky. She embraced her on the pool deck and said well done and congratulated her, and they'll go, of course, again into Olympic competition. She's backing up in the 200. Of course, the gold medalist, the Australian gold medalist, and the heats, I think, come up later today. So all of that, there's plenty of interest in it, and certainly wonderful viewing, even without crowds. But there are still plenty of places with the virus overtaking them. I'm just doing a story this morning on Fiji. We've got a real outbreak on the main island of Fiji, and the poor beggars don't have too much to combat it. And Japan, Tokyo, by the way, is still battling it. They've got them quarantined, locked away at the moment. They haven't had any missteps in relation to the virus, and you hope that'll be the case for the entirety of the games, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, a long way to go. We'll be listening. I know you'll also be talking about whether or not there is going to be another protest at Freedom Rally this weekend. I know police have got a zero-tolerance approach, Ray. We'll be listening after 9.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
The Ray Hadley Morning Show's coming up next. Now, this is just terrible news. It involves Dieter Brummer. Now, Dieter Brummer was an actor on Home and Away, and he appeared in more than 500 episodes in the early 1990s. I think it's fair to say that Dieter Brummer was a heartthrob. He won 2 Logies as the most popular actor. He was found by police over the weekend deceased, and it looks like he took his own life. He joined Home and Away at the age of 15, straight out of high school. After 6 years, he stepped away from the show, later working as a window cleaner on high-rise buildings. He returned to the screens on shows like Neighbours in the late 2000s and early 2010s. He was also on one of the Underbelly shows, and now he's gone. Just 45 years of age. In a statement, Dieter Brummer's family described him as a handsome, talented, funny and complicated individual. The family says he's left a massive hole in our lives and in our world. It will never be the same. So we send our wishes, our love to the family of Dieter Brummer, who's passed away at the age of 45. And a reminder, If you're in trouble and you need someone to talk to, Lifeline 13 11 14, Beyond Blue 1300 224 636, the Kids Helpline 1800 551 800, and gotchaforlife.org. There's always someone out there who can help. Plenty of people from other parts of New South Wales who are saying, what about us? Why are we still in lockdown when we've got no cases? Wayne says Shell Harbour hasn't had a case for months, yet we're still in lockdown. How ridiculous. Lee says, I live at Umina Beach. There's not been any cases within 50 k's of where I live and work. It's like a ghost town in Gosford, and business is really struggling. Ben says, if they open up suburbs with 0 cases, it will promote movement. Well, yes, you're going to have rules in place there, Ben. A bit like with the Northern Beaches. When the Northern Beaches was in lockdown, then you weren't allowed to leave the Northern Beaches and you weren't allowed to go into the Northern Beaches. Julie says, I'm up here on the Central Coast. We've been told this morning by Adam Crouch MP on his Facebook page that the Central Coast will not be removed from lockdown because we had a couple of cases over the weekend. Businesses are dying. The kids are going insane. Let us out. Now, this one's coming from Frank. Morning, Ben. I'm with you on the lockdowns. I've got a blind mate I drop in on regularly that I've known since 1989. He's just outside the 10-kilometre zone from my location, and I'm not allowed to go and visit, despite being mates for 32 years. It's got to be the last lockdown. It has to be. Cheers. Frank in Concord. Frank, you can go and see him. And I had someone before saying, oh, Ben shouldn't be encouraging people to defy the health orders. I'm not. It's within the health orders. Frank, that is a compassionate visit. You've got a mate who's blind and he needs someone to drop in on him, to check up on him, to make sure he's okay. He may have been on his own for a month. I don't know how long he's been on his own, but you have got a compassionate reason to go and say hello. Frank will get in touch off air so we can have a conversation. Boy, there are some good people out there. We got a text from someone in a dark place yesterday, a woman in the Blue Mountains. She said, I can't do this anymore. Lifeline is no help because it's not giving me and my son what we need, social interaction and stimulation. I'm in the Blue Mountains, no cases here. Why am I being forced into lockdown? I will have a newborn in a few weeks with a toddler and will have to handle all of that in social isolation. Now, we reached out to her after the show just to offer any support that we can, but someone else reached out too, a listener by the name of Lorraine. Lorraine says, I'm a member of several parenting groups in the mountains and I would love to reach out to that lady. I can put her in touch with some lovely young mums and other people her age who are keen to connect with her. I think she was very brave to share her feelings, and I'm sure that others are feeling the same way. The Blue Mountains community is a warm and welcoming one, and no one should be feeling isolated. So this is coming from one of our listeners, Lorraine. At the same time, we were reaching out just to check on the lady who wrote to us because we thought, oh, it just sounds so dark. And Lorraine finishes her note by saying, as they say, it takes a village to raise a child, and we are here to help. And that's a sign of the kind of people we have listening. Thank you very much to Lorraine for sending us a note, and to everyone else who's offering to help people out during these difficult times. The Ray Hadley Morning Show is coming up next. Then it's Deb Knight on afternoons and Jim Wilson on drive. Now, let me give you a lesson for the kids homeschooling today. In the early 1900s, you can win an Olympic gold medal in art. There were medals for paintings, essays, music or sculptures. So there you go, kids. There's your homeschooling done for today. Maybe some more from Mum and Dad. We'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.